Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today on setting and reaching goals. My name is Rosemary Nichols, and I am a health educator for Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare and Tufts Health Plan. I'm also an educator at Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where I teach health and wellness courses and nutrition courses. Did you make a New Year's resolution this year, or perhaps any year, and find within a matter of sometimes days, weeks, or a couple of months, uh, you broke that promise to yourself? You broke that New Year's resolution? Changing behavior is hard, isn't it? But the same process that created the problem behavior, whether it was um, watching TV, for example, instead of exercising, or having that 11 o'clock bowl of ice cream in the evening, the same process that created the problem behavior is often the solution to changing that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We have habits, and we want to make those changes to more positive behaviors. Let's start with the concept of a habit. I'll define it as our usual way of behaving. And habits are likely to form through goal pursuit. What is it that we're trying to attain? And a constant repetition, we do things over and over until they become habits. And basically, we're repeating what works for us. Maybe the behavior, for example, having that cigarette stimulates us, or we find it relaxing, or there's a sense of community when we smoke with others. But it works in some way with us. And eventually, the behaviors become unconscious. We don't have to think about them. There's a trigger, and that activates the behavior, and there's some consequence we're going to see. Usually, we get a reward of some sort. So when you desire to implement a behavior change, you have to remember a couple of things. That the subconscious mind is at work here. It directs the particular behavior. That means, because it's subconscious, you need to pay attention to the habit. You have to be mindful. And so you have to decide, how is the habit serving me? What am I getting out of it? What's the reward? And as I said, you see this ABC, this antecedent. There's usually some trigger that triggers my habit or my behavior, and there's some consequence. And as I said, generally, it's a reward. So there are some things that we can do to change that behavior. First of all, we have to remember not to forget. You have to think about, what are the benefits of the behavior change that I want to make? In other words, why do I want to change this behavior? What am I going to get out of it? Why, what are the reasons I want to make the change? Is it weight loss? Is it that I want to be healthier, for example? You need to write things down. In general, when we're trying to change behavior, if we don't continue to remember why we want to make the change and what the benefits are, we'll tend to go back to the old behavior. So we need constant reminders. Remember, we're creatures of habit. And these reminders, these reasons can keep us motivated. And the motivation has to come from within. Okay, it has to be intrinsic as opposed to coerced. Typically we listen to other people when they try to coerce us to make a change, whether it's weight loss, exercise, not smoking, whatever the case may be. But we have to buy into it. We have to be motivated to make that change in order for it to happen. We have to review our benefits and our reasons on a regular basis. You can use a journal and you can write these things down. The other thing is there are always triggers or cues to these habits that we engage in. They can be thoughts or a situation. We see other people doing things, for example, and that motivates us to engage in that particular behavior. The consequences, in essence, can be both positive or negative. And I've given you a couple of examples here. When people sit down and they watch, cable, and there may be some advertising that comes on, and we see this particularly with kids, don't we? That will trigger the motivation when it comes to food, to eat junk food. Go and get the cookies, go and get the chips. This, and then eating those things activates the brain's reward center. Am I going to get a surge of dopamine, for example? When I eat that particular food, is the behavior going to make me feel calm, for example? So whatever that reward is, it's only going to reinforce the behavior. On a positive note, you could set an alarm on your phone as a reminder to exercise. This will be a trigger to go to bed at a certain time. Or if you have a job, for example, where you sit for hours upon hours at the computer, a reminder to stand up, maybe to do some stretching at your desk. You have to think about the barriers or the obstacles to change, because we're always going to have barriers or obstacles. And one, I think, of the biggies is the fear of failure. And maybe you've tried things before and you haven't been successful. And I like to remind people to think of a previous failure as an effort at learning to engage in the new behavior. I always think back, if you learned how to ride a bike, as I did when I was a child, I probably can't count the number of times that I fell off. But I got right back on and I tried again. I was really motivated to ride the bike, to be able to go with, older kids in my neighborhood, to ride with them. So you can't let the fear get in the way. And that certainly is a barrier. You have to write down any barriers, whether it's fear, it could be money if you want to go to the gym, for example, and maybe your income is, you don't have that extra money to pay for the gym membership. So write down the barriers and think about ways you can overcome them. For example, you want to engage in physical activity. Maybe you don't have time or the money, or sometimes people are embarrassed to go to the gym. It's like, well, I'll go to the gym when I lose a few pounds. I'll go to the gym when I become a little more fit, right? Go out and take a walk. And it doesn't cost much. Hopefully you've got, a decent pair of walking shoes or running shoes. Put them beside your door at home. Take them to work, in a gym bag, leave them at your desk, and find that part of your lunchtime, for example, to go out and take a walk. Be sure also that you do something that you enjoy when it comes to physical activity, because this can be a barrier. It has to be something. I am not into, we used to call it aerobic dance. I think it's Zumba now. I feel like I have two left feet. And so that's not something I would stay with. But getting on a treadmill or going out for a walk or a jog is more my thing. And that's something I can stick with. When you think about quitting smoking, what other kind of stress relief? Learning to meditate, for example. Sometimes people talk about, they get together with other people. They feel it's a sense of community. At the college, students get together and they smoke. There's a designated smoking area. We don't have as many as we used to, but they're there. And some students say, I have a sense of community with these people. Well, maybe you have to establish a new community. Get with a group of people that you share some other interest with, aside from smoking. Maybe you're going to join a book club, for example. Maybe it's hiking, whatever the case may be. Maybe it's volunteering. And when it comes to quitting smoking, many people consider it a stimulant. You get up first thing in the morning, maybe a good shower can be that stimulant. Going and doing a little exercise, either right, beside your bed, or getting out and doing exercise. Those things will increase heart rate and blood pressure. Those are stimulating. And the barrier can be a lack of motivation. So you have to be in the right place. You have to want to do it, as opposed to being cursed. You got to do it for yourself. You can buy into other people may want you to do it. I sometimes have seen people that have pictures of their kids that they put in the cigarette pack as their tapering, if you will, before a particular quit day. And their kids want them to quit smoking. And so they're not feeling coerced, but they're doing it for someone else. The kids say, gee, Dad, I wish you wouldn't smoke. And so that then becomes their motivation. You need to establish goals. If you said, by the end of the year, I want to save X number of dollars, or I am going to save X number of dollars, let's say, great. How are you going to do that? What's your plan? You have to have a plan. The plan has to involve a goal that's clear and something that's attainable, right? So maybe you already know about SMART goals. They're used in business, they're used in teaching, certainly in changing health behaviors. So you create SMART goals. We'll look at those in a minute. And it's probably a good idea to make an effort to change one behavior at a time. If you try to do too many things, it can become stressful. You want to be successful at the behavior change. And then that success carries you on and makes you realize, wow, I can be successful. I can make a change. And then you can work on another issue if you have more than one. If you can, get started, set short as well as long-term goals. The short-term goals allow you to assess how you're doing. They give you feedback, those short-term goals. And if you say, well, gee, I've done well this week, and whatever the behavior is, whether it's eating more fruits and vegetables or whatever, that can motivate me along the way, and I can continue that behavior. Excuse me. Take time to evaluate and review. In other words, how are you doing? You might have to revise your stated goal. Maybe that goal was not clear enough, or maybe you were asking too much of yourself within a short period of time. So let's, continue with this thought. The goal, when you establish it, has to be very specific. Eating healthier is not specific enough. People have different ideas. Is it, reducing my fat? Is it eating healthier fats? Is it cutting my sugar? What does it mean? And is it measurable? You say, I'm going to walk. Great. How much time you're going to walk, or, for how long, or how far, how many days a week. And the goal can't be too high or too low. You want it to be able to test you a little bit, but not so high that it's not achievable. Just like Goldilocks, it has to be just right. So maybe you start with 15 minutes 3 days a week. And then eventually a half hour, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week. And remember, when it comes to exercise, the recommendation is a half hour, 30 minutes of aerobic activity, at least 5 days a week for about 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic exercise. That, like Goldilocks would say, is just right. Can help to reduce our disease risk. And is it realistic? You can't say I'm going to lose 10 pounds a week. 1 to 2 pounds a week certainly is a lot more realistic. And how are you going to track it? And tracking your behavior can allow you to tweak it if necessary, and it also can give you the motivation. You can do it on an app, you can do it, in a journal, and it should be time bound. So, how long are you going to do it? And is it going to be a month? And maybe you're going to find that you're going to extend that period, or you're going to make some change in the timing. Let's just look at a couple of these. And you'll notice I've got the word will instead of I will try. That may be too ambivalent. I will eat fish twice a week at dinner time for 1 month, beginning next Monday. Maybe you want to have short-term goals, even for less than a month if you're not a fish eater. I will walk with a coworker for 30 minutes during lunch 5 days a week. Maybe you're going to do fewer than 5 days or less than 30 minutes to start. Okay? Or you're going to decrease your soda consumption from 2 cans a day to 1 a day. Or maybe you're going from soda altogether to sparkling water. Other things you want to consider. You need to have supports. And by that, I mean people that are going to encourage you. You want to avoid what I call toxic people, those people that make you feel bad about yourself. Hey, I'm going to quit smoking, or it's been a week. Oh, for heaven's sakes, you've been quitting, or you've tried quitting about 10 times already. You've gone back to it. Forget it. Have a cigarette with us. Find people that will encourage you to be successful, to move forward. And by the way, when it comes to toxic people, remind them, well, yeah, I wasn't successful last time, but I look at that as having been practice. And, with the supports that I have and the knowledge I have now, I can accomplish my goal. Plan for slip-ups. Whether it's going off a diet, whether it's not exercising or having that cigarette, use it as a way to learn what went wrong. Why did I have that slip up? What could I have done differently? Was I too stressed, for example? Did I not get enough sleep? Did I skip a meal and I was, way too hungry when it was dinner time? Focus on and remind yourself often of the benefits, getting back to that, not forgetting, remembering why you want to change the behavior. I put that here again because it's so important. When we forget, we're usually more likely to slide back. And as I just mentioned, as one of the reasons why people have a slip up is work on managing your stress. Many of the habits that we engage in that we want to change are often related to, it's a way we've, habitualized to deal with our stress, whether it comes to eating behavior, whether it's, smoking as another example, right? So when we're stressed, we tend to gravitate towards those habits that provide a reward for us. Set a date. When you're going to start this. Maybe it's not going to be today. Maybe it's going to be next week. And make an announcement to those people, especially that you want their support. And ask them for that support. Sometimes you'll say, these are people that you're our friends or a family that want to support you. I'm starting this diet, for example, and I might be a little irritable, or I'm going to give up smoking and I may be a little irritable. I hope you won't take it personally. Just know that it might happen. And I want you to encourage me to stay on track. Create reminders, as I said, I keep saying that, so, so important. And lean into the discomfort. Be willing to experience it, because behavior change isn't easy, but anything worth having, we know, is not easy, right? And also, it's really important that we see ourselves, images of ourselves engaging in the new behavior, whatever it may be. So use visualization when you want to make a change. Imagine your new self, if you will, engaged in that new behavior. And if you can't quite do that on your own, imagine yourself with someone who already engages in that behavior. For example, someone who exercises, you can imagine yourself taking a walk with them or at the gym with them or whatever. You have to start imagining yourself. You have to start believing that you can change your behavior. If you have children and they tell you, I'll never learn this, right? You know that if they get the tutoring, if they put the effort in, and if they say to themselves, I can do this with the help I'm getting, they can be successful. But if they keep saying, I'll never be able to do this, it doesn't motivate them to engage in the behavior that will allow them to reach the new goal. And include small rewards to yourself. They can be internal so that you say positive things to yourself, good for me, or they can be external. If like to write in a journal, buy yourself a new journal, or go to Home Goods and buy yourself a new gadget for the kitchen. They've got some for $2 and $3 and $4. But the rewards are important as well. And engineering your environment is so, so important. And I think of this in two ways. So there's that social environment, and the contextual, the physical cues that we need to change, that we're engaged in certain routines. I had a student one time who told me that in her effort to change her diet, she drove to school. She actually made a plan to not use the same roads that she had, traveled to school on previously, because there was a donut shop along the way. And it was such a habit for her to pull into that donut shop. She said it almost just happened automatically, and I'd go in and get a donut and coffee. And that was a trigger for me. So I decided I'm going to take another route to school. And you can add or delete objects to the environment. So maybe you're going to put sneakers or walking shoes near the back door, or your gym bag near the back door. Or you're going to take your gym bag to work if there's a gym where you are, for example. If you don't want to, eat all of those Oreo cookies when you come home and you're hungry and dinner's not made yet, you want to get rid of that cookie jar that's right on the counter, out of sight, out of mind, and put a nice bowl of fruit there so you'll have some fruit while you're preparing your dinner. Or have a bunch of vegetables, cut up carrot sticks, for example, and ready for you to snack on. And do you know positive affirmations? You can find a bunch of them on the internet, and you can find them for anything. They have positive affirmations for people that are grieving, for people that want to change body image, for people that have problems with procrastination. The idea is that If I can say positive things to myself, I can get to believe them and they become part of my being, rather than I'll never be able to do this or I can't do this. You might say, I'm ready to make this positive change because I've got the knowledge, I've got the tools, and I've got the supports that I now have available to me. And that, when I think about supports, they can be friends, they can be family, depending on what the behavior changes, they can be therapists, they can be weight loss programs, whatever the case is, smoking cessation programs and groups. I'm learning to enjoy the foods that are best for my body. By the way, making a behavior change not only involves repetition, but it takes a matter of time. It can take as short as 2 weeks, but that doesn't happen too often. It can be up to 3/4 of a year or so. The average is a few months. So you have to make a commitment long enough. And remember, as we sort of go along, where we get a little lazy about the reminders, etc. And that's when we start to slide back into the old behaviors. We're creatures of habit. Change those behaviors. It's like walking on a grass, through a grassy field. If a particular section is used consistently by people, it gets worn down. You develop a path. Well, maybe you want to develop a new path, a new behavior. That's basically what happens in the brain. So it's easier to maintain the behavior if it's repeated, and if it's repeated in a specific context. For example, maybe a cue to flossing your teeth. You say, gee, I need to do it on a regular basis. You set a certain time to do it. Maybe watching the nightly news, for example. Actually, I started this behavior many, many years ago. A dentist recommended it. And now I just do it automatically. I don't even need the nightly news anymore. It's just matter of fact at a certain time at night, I just automatically grab the floss and floss my teeth. It becomes so ingrained. But that initial cue is important. You want to change your eating behavior, call a friend, try reading a book. So you've got to think about alternatives to the eating. Revisit your goals. Why do you want to change the behavior? What are the benefits to changing the behavior? Go out and take a walk, get away from the situation. Anything that will distract you from the desire to eat, and it will pass. Sometimes think about your shopping. If you like to shop, you don't even think about eating, right? It might even go past your lunchtime. You're so engaged in the shopping behavior. But if you have nothing to do and you're bored, eating is on your mind constantly, perhaps. Physical activity, you want to do more of it, set a timer and remind yourself. Lay out your exercise clothes before you go to bed, or have your gym clothes, your sneakers behind, by the back door. Albert Einstein here. He reminded us that success isn't linear, right? It's not a straight line. And we learn from our setbacks. That's the thing, why did you, have that can of cola? Why did you skip that gym date? Why did you have that cigarette? You want to learn what did I do or not do that I could have changed that would have kept me in the new behavior. And remember, again, change isn't comfortable. I told you earlier, lean into it. Create clear goals, but know it's okay to adjust them as needed. Sometimes we have to do that. It's done in business every day, right? You have to make adjustments. And see yourself as the center of control. The motivation and the behavior, it has to be intrinsic. You need to want to do it. Don't rely on other people. They can be your support, but you've got to want to do it. And avoid certain times. Once in a while, the time isn't the best to make the effort to change. maybe you're in the middle of an extremely stressful situation. You know, there may be a serious illness in the family, for example. Um, and we just may have to postpone things, not to put them off permanently, but to postpone them. We have old habits. We can make new habits. Try using your phone right now or sending yourself an email, and you can begin the progress. A number of resources here, and take a look at these, and I will take a moment. We're at the end to look in the chat. If you have a comment or a question, we'll address that before we end. And I want to thank you for listening today. So let me stop sharing.